Hello and welcome to PEDRO'S Movie Podcast with me, Pedro. I've been absent for a while, and there's a reason for it. I did say in one of the videos that I was taking a break for a while, and one of the reasons I took a break was one was to do with my own mental health. Another one is obviously I've been trying to find a job, which I haven't had much luck on the job front at the moment. And I've lost all drive to do content. I did record a video the other day. I recorded a 35-minute Blu-ray update or physical media update. And when I went to replay it back just to see how it looked, the sound didn't record, and I couldn't be bothered re-recording the video because it took 35 minutes to do, and I didn't want to waste another 35 minutes to find out that the audio would probably fuck up again on that one. But so the reasons why I've been absent and why I haven't uploaded the fourth part of a brief history of post-apocalypse movies is because writing a script is not the easiest thing in the world. Especially if I'm writing a script that's covering multiple different films, and I need to be able to have at least 2 to 3 minutes per film. I do have a rough cut edit of Part 4, which is 80s Part 2, 1986 to 1989, which actually does start with 2 films from 1985. I was also quite ill. I had probably the worst flu that I've had in a long, long time. And I'm still not fully over it. I mean, I still cough and I'm still all bunged up and stuffed up and stuff. It probably doesn't help that I'm stuck in a flat for the entirety of the day. But I wanted to just put this episode out now because I feel like I do have a cool little community of people that are around. That do follow my channel, and I just wanted to apologise and say that I am still around, but I have had to work through a few things, specifically like I said, my mental health and all that jazz. Being stuck in a flat for the entire day because I have nothing to do. I went from working 40 hours a week, surrounded by people, to working no hours a week and spending a lot of time by myself. So a lot of that time was me just sat in front of the TV watching crap. The last couple of weeks, I've gotten a little bit more out of my headspace. I'm still not 100% on whether or not I'm gonna finish the post-apocalypse thing at the moment. I've got a lot of script written. And like I said, there's a rough edit of all the films. If anything, I'll edit it down into 2 parts. So it's not going to be like a 40-minute video. It's probably going to be like a 15-minute video, which I can do. I mean, I can get the first part out now. That's not a problem. I can probably get that up. Just have to do a little bit more editing and a bit of a re-record of the audio. But I just felt like I should make myself known, say hello and hello everyone. I'm Pete. I have actually I spent a lot of time watching movies. I've watched quite a few films over the last couple of weeks. Like I said, I was in. It's not depression, but it's more a case of your mind wandering and kind of telling you whether or not you're worth it, if you know what I mean. So when I'm in a sort of down mood, I'll look to sources of entertainment that'll kind of uplift me and kind of get me out of a not horrendous, but a sort of low down state. So I kind of watched a lot of British comedy. I watched every single episode of Only Fools and Horses. I watched every episode of Spaced. I've been watching Dad's Army, Blackadder, just stuff that is funny that can get me out of certain ruts. And then I transitioned into watching a few movies, and it kind of got me into a routine of every night now when I go to bed I watch a film. So last night, for instance, I was trying to find something to watch, just because I sit at my desk and my TV's in front of me, and I'll just sit here and I'll watch a film. Like last night, I decided to rewatch Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof.
Remember when I said this car was death proof? Well, that wasn't a lie. This car is 100% death proof. Only to get the benefit of it, honey, you really need to be sitting in my seat.
It's a interesting film. I was trying to write a bit of a sort of essay about it, but again, like the motivation I have for doing that just is almost non-existent at the moment. But yeah, rewatched Death Proof last night, and something dawned on me while I was watching it. This dawned on me about the movie, not about anything else. But I noticed that. Because I noticed that Death Proof is a film of two halves. It's not a 3-act structure movie. It's a 2-act structure movie. You've got the first act, and then you've got the second act, with a tiny little sort of brief interlude in between, which connects Grindhouse, well, the two Grindhouse movies, Planet Terror and Death Proof, with the Michael Parks, Earl McGraw sequence at the hospital. But you could take that out, and it wouldn't make any difference to the movie whatsoever. But the first half of the movie is a clear love letter to 1970s Grindhouse movies, even though nothing really happens in the film. Or in the first half, there is a lot of talk, there's a lot of dialogue, and Tarantino is known for his dialogue, but there is a lot of dialogue that literally leads to nothing, much like the second half, which I'll get into in a minute. But the first half of Death Proof, it's a lot of women talking about nothing. Whereas you watch like previous Tarantino movies, so something like Pulp Fiction, you have that iconic scene of Vincent and Jules in the car talking about the difference between American McDonald's and French McDonald's. What, Amsterdam, Holland, Dutch McDonald's. So you've got the Big Mac with cheese, the Big Mac or the Royale with cheese, that type of thing. Which, yes, it's a nothing conversation, but it's a conversation that sounds cool. Whereas in Death Proof, you don't have that sort of, there's not the sort of zing to it that feels cool. It just feels, and I said this originally when the film came out in 2007, I said it's as though Tarantino sat in a cafe and just recorded a group of random women just having a chat and then transcribed it into a script form. And I still feel that way. I still feel that Death Proof, it suffers mainly due to its non-existent dialogue that is there. The dialogue is there. I mean, the most memorable dialogue in the film is probably in the second half, where Zoe Bell's talking about her coming to America and wanting to drive the car from, a 1972 Dodge Challenger or Dodge Charger with a white paint job, the car from Vanishing Point. That is probably the most memorable line or bit of dialogue from the film. So yeah, while I was watching it, I realized that like there are certain elements in that film that are amazing, specifically obviously like the last 25-30 minutes, which is the car chase. But what I did notice as well is that while it's supposed to be a homage to Grindhouse movies of the 1970s, those were generally made by directors who didn't have a huge amount of skill behind the camera. But the opening of Death Proof, the first 45 minutes of Death Proof, has some insanely good cinematography. Like the color grading, the cinematography, the camera movements are just, they look incredible. I mean, obviously, when you shoot on 35mm film, it's always going to look better than if you shoot on digital. And the case in point was I saw the trailer for Jurassic World, the new one, the other day, which is directed by Gareth not Gareth Evans. He did the Raid. The guy who made Rogue One and the creator. He's directed the new Jurassic World, and as soon as the trailer started, I was just like, "This is shot on film." And so I went to Google. I googled, "Is the new Jurassic Park film shot, or Jurassic World film? Is it shot on film?" And yes, it's shot on film, and that instantly stood out to me because I think film always makes the screen look better. Always the image always looks better when it's shot on film, on 35mm film. Now, watching Death Proof, I checked that the film was actually shot on 35mm film. It's a Tarantino movie, so of course it's going to be shot on film. It's never ever going to be shot on digital. And the color grading it looks so good. Take all the scratchiness off that movie, and it's probably specifically the first opening. Well, the opening 45 minutes, it's probably the best looking Tarantino directed film post Kill Bill, but obviously pre Django Unchained, because in between Kill Bill and Django Unchained you had Death Proof and Inglourious Bastards. Now, Inglourious Bastards looks amazing anyway, and that's shot on 35mm film, but there is just something about the look of the the first 45 minutes of Death Proof that is incredibly stunning. And I was watching it and I was thinking, this just looks so good. Like, just looks amazing. And then it cuts to the second half of the film. Like I said, it's not a film of 3 acts, it's a film of 2 acts. Well, you could say it's a 3-act film because you got the first act, which is the sort of throwback to the exploitation movies, and then you've got the second act, which is the new group of girls, and then them just talking random bollocks for, say, like 25 minutes, and then you cut to the third act, which is the whole car chase sequence. But I'm kind of including all that together. I'm not going to include. I'm not going to keep the so-called second act of them talking as a separate thing. It's because it's a 2-act movie. It's one group of women in the first act to another group of women in the second act, strung together with Kurt Russell stuntman Mike. The film still has a lot of issues that I notice. Like the whole graininess and the aesthetic of being a battered print, it just vanishes in the second half of the film. It's shot in broad daylight in Texas, and it loses something when it cuts to the second act. Something that the first act has, which is obviously it is a throwback to grindhouse movies of the 1970s. The look. There's a shot of the car, which is a Plymouth Cuda, I think, or a Barracuda or something like that. There's a shot of that in the rain, and it's one of the most gorgeous shots I've seen in a long, long time, because you can see the rain hitting the bonnet of the car, and on front of the bonnet is the skull with the lightning bolts. It just looks incredible. But yeah, the film still suffers from certain things. It's not I wouldn't say it's a mess, because it's not a mess. It's an inconsistent film, vision, like aesthetically, I guess you could say. And it made me think about other films that would fit better into a grindhouse double feature from both directors. You could put I would if I was Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, and I was going to redo a sort of program of grindhouse movies, I would select From Dusk Till Dawn and Kill Bill Volume 1, because those films sort of, they imbue that sort of 1970s grindhouse feel. And I think they fit a lot better than the ones that were actually given. Like Planet Terror, while it's supposed to be a throwback to 70s exploitation cinema and horror, it feels more like a 1980s body horror movie like Stuart Gordon's Reanimator, or the remake of The Blob, and instead of things like Lucio Fulci's Zombie and Nightmare City and stuff like that. And that, I think that's kind of what ruins the whole thing, the whole Grindhouse experience, is the fact that these are meant to be throwbacks to the 70s exploitation cinema, when one of them is a throwback to 70s exploitation cinema and the other one is a throwback to 1980s sci-fi horror. It kind of they don't really work together. They don't complement each other, if you know what I mean. So Grindhouse, I think Kill Bill and From Dusk Till Dawn would complement each other quite well, because one is a throwback to vampire movies, and even though, like, I'd say the first half of From Dusk Till Dawn is very much a Grindhouse crime thriller, the second half, again, sort of doesn't feel like the first half, but it does it in a way where the tone is consistent, if you know what I mean. Same with Kill Bill. Kill Bill starts off as Kill Bill is a revenge movie. So Kill Bill Volume 1, you start off with the bride. She's tracking down the people on her list. So it starts with Vanita Green when she's out of hospital. And she works her way through each person on the list until she gets to, obviously, Kill Bill Volume 2, which I'm not going to talk about. But Kill Bill Volume 1, whack a bit of grain over that, and you've got that perfect, like, throwback to Japanese cinema of the 1970s, like the Shaw Brothers Hong Kong martial arts movies, and like the Sonny Chiba movies of the 1970s, and just that sort of grindhousey feel of those samurai movies from back in the day. And From Dusk Till Dawn has that gritty crime aesthetic from the 1970s, like what's the word for it? I'm not gonna say it feels like the French Connection and stuff like that, but it has that sort of grit to it. And then the second half has that 1980s vampire feel to it. I think they work better as a double than Planet Terror and Death Proof worked as a double. But I'm not going to carry on talking about Death Proof. It's just something, because I watched it last night, I just realised that there was, like, there are definite issues with the film that prevents them, both films, from that prevents them from working cohesively as a complementary. I don't know, they don't complement each other well. I think if Rodriguez had used Machete instead of Planet Terror, I think that probably would have complemented itself to Death Proof. But being a Robert Rodriguez movie, if he removed all of the CGI and just focused on practical effects and stuff like that, and real stunts like Tarantino did with Death Proof. I mean, that car chase at the end of Death Proof is fucking incredible. But yeah, like, you've got one film that feels like a 70s movie. They both, I mean, even like the first half and the second half of Death Proof, the only thing, like, they might feel different aesthetically. Like, one's clean and one's dirty. But they both feel like 70s movies. I mean, the cars in it are 70s muscle cars. Kurt Russell is fucking phenomenal in it. But then you look at Planet Terror, and Planet Terror doesn't feel the same. Planet Terror is just like, let's see how many cameos we can get into this so-called exploitation films. So you've got Bruce Willis, you've got not James Brolin, Josh Brolin's in it. You've got Michael Parks and James Parks show up as Earl McGraw and his son. You've got Naveen Andrews from Lost and other known British shows that show up in it. Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas is in it. It seems like Robert Rodriguez was just like, I want to get as many people into this movie as I possibly can. And it kind of ruins the rest of the film. Even Michael Bihn's in it. It kind of ruins the film. Now, I enjoy Planet Terror, but I think I enjoy Death Proof more, even though I have massive issues with... Not massive issues, but I have massive technical problems with Death Proof. But Planet Terror is fun, if a bit over the top. Now, I can understand films being over the top. I watched Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire the other day, and it was insane. It was an hour and a half of ridiculousness, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because there was nothing in that film that was trying to push an agenda or trying to say something about society or global warming or this, that, and the other. It was literally a film about monsters fighting monsters. Giant monsters fighting monsters. Which is why I think Pacific Rim, the first one, worked so well, is because it was just a film about robots versus monsters. And that's why I think I enjoyed Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, so much, was because it was unapologetically stupid. And films need to do that more often, but also to hold your attention. Like, there's some other films that are out there, you could say unapologetically stupid, but they're actual rubbish. What else did I watch? I rewatched Shaun of the Dead. Absolutely love Shaun of the Dead. I rewatched Shaun of the Dead because I rewatched all of Spaced again, and I love Spaced, and Spaced is what basically introduced me to Simon Pegg. That and Big Train, the sketch comedy show from BBC from 1999, which came out the same year as Spaced, or 1998 I think it was. Came out the same year as Spaced, I think. And so I was in the Simon Pegg mood. Now I thought, well, I'm not going to watch Hot Fuzz, because I watched Hot Fuzz about 2 weeks ago anyway. It was on Netflix. I was just going through the streaming services trying to find something to watch because I couldn't be asked getting off the sofa. But while I was sat here at the desk in front of my TV, I was like, what can I watch? And my Blu-ray of Shaun of the Dead is literally just sat on my chest of drawers. So I'll pop Shaun of the Dead on. So I put Shaun of the Dead on. Now, bear in mind, I've watched that film countless times. I can I've memorised half the script, and I fucking loved it. I enjoyed every single moment of that film. And it had been a while since I'd seen it. Not a massive while. It had been like maybe a year since I last watched Shaun of the Dead. But every moment of that film is just so enjoyable. And it's also a very stupid film. And I don't mean stupid as in like things that are done in the film are stupid. I just mean it's very silly. It's very much like Hot Fuzz. Every script, every joke in Hot Fuzz lands because it's incredibly well written. Now, if you've watched Spaced, you'll see like elements of Spaced in the Cornetto trilogy. So I think while they came off Spaced, Shaun of the Dead was 2000. So Spaced ended in 2002. 2001? Might have been 2002. 2001. 99 to 2001. So Shaun of the Dead comes out in 2004. So they started making it and writing it essentially straight after Spaced. And then straight after Shaun of the Dead, they start writing Hot Fuzz in 2007. And after Hot Fuzz, obviously, you've got Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg go off and do different things. Nick Frost does different things as well. They came up with Paul, which is it's just not very good. And then they come back and they do The World's End. Now, The World's End it's the weakest of the three because it is trying to relay a message. And I think when you try and insert a sort of message into a film like that, whereas the previous two haven't actually attempted to do that, like Hot Fuzz isn't about crime and stuff like that, or so the message in it is that be wary of small town UK. The message in Shaun of the Dead is, I don't know, I can't even think of a message that would be in Shaun of the Dead, but the message of The World's End is how you age physically and mentally. And it looks at depression and alcoholism and stuff like that. Well, not depression, not alcoholism, but it shows that Gary King is an arsehole character. Now, there hasn't been an unlikable character in either Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz. Even characters who are technically dicks are still somewhat likable, like David, played by Dylan Moran in Shaun of the Dead. He is an arsehole, but he's still a likable arsehole. In Hot Fuzz, the Andys are arseholes, but they're likable arseholes. In The World's End, Gary King is a prick, and that's what works against that film. That really, really ruins the film, is the fact that Gary King is an arsehole for the entirety of that film, and there isn't a single moment of redemption for Gary King in that film. He enables his friends, and doesn't really care about them. All he wants to do is relive his youth, whereas the others have moved on. In the case of Nick Frost's character, after an incident that almost killed him, has decided to stop drinking. Gary essentially forces him to get back on the wagon, while obviously dealing with a alien invasion, which, like, kind of... I mean, there are deeper themes to... I suppose there are deeper themes to Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, but they're not as blatant as in The World's End. And The World's End, while it's an enjoyable film, it is a fun movie, it struggles to keep the momentum going, because every now and then they'll say something that'll bring the tone down. It'll drop the tone from being this ha 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 to, poor guy. And it doesn't have the same joke base as the previous two movies. There's running jokes in Shaun of the Dead, and there's running jokes in Hot Fuzz. And I'm not talking about the fence I was, man, I've never taken a shortcut before. I'm talking about, like, in Shaun of the Dead is that you've got red on you. There's just a throwaway joke, isn't it? You've got red on you. In Hot Fuzz, it's, what, you ain't seen Bad Boys 2? Or he's fuck ugly. But the running joke in The World's End, well, there's two, I suppose. There's two jokes in The World's End that run like consistently through the film, which is the joke about the door lintel and the joke about good names for bands. And after a while, they get sort of tired because they are repeated. Whereas, like, the You Got Red on You or the throwaway jokes from Hot Fuzz, like the greater good, like, they are repeated in those films. Like, there's a line in Hot Fuzz where they're in the shop, in the corner shop buying cornettos, where there's a radio call over like a walkie-talkie saying, check out that Nicholas Angel, check out his arse. And that's repeated. That's repeated throughout the film. I say it's repeated. I think it's repeated maybe twice. But in The World's End, sorry, I'm talking because my mouth is really dry. My throat's really dry. Continually talking is kind of making me cough. But throughout the film, The World's End, the constant reiteration of these jokes get stale. And that's why the momentum that is so prevalent in Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and even Spaced, it gets lost in The World's End because it's like they can't come up with another joke. That's not to say that I dislike The World's End. I don't. I actually really enjoy it. But compared to, like, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, which to me are comedy masterclasses, writing comedy masterclasses, or written comedy masterclasses, because especially Hot Fuzz, which every single line is a joke that lands every single time. And it's a fantastic screenplay. And I don't think it's appreciated enough as to how good that script for Hot Fuzz really is. But yeah, so next. What else did I watch? What else did I watch? I watched, like yesterday I had a shit zombie movie day. So I watched a film called Severed, Forest of the Dead, which is from 2005. It's a low-budget zombie movie, made in Canada, about a experimental gene that is supposed to make trees grow at a rapid pace, as opposed to how trees normally grow, for a logging company to be able to use. So essentially artificially creating trees for a logging company to cut down and then replace. And something goes wrong, and the loggers who cut down the trees notice that there's this sap that looks blood red that comes out of the trees, but if it gets into your bloodstream or into your mouth or something, you turn into a zombie. And it's a very low budget zombie film that relies too heavily on shaky cam, I guess, a lot of handheld shaky cam to give it a sort of what's the word for it? When something's like really, really, I don't know. I suppose it's meant to give it a sort of fast-paced, scary feel. And I know I said I had a shit zombie day yesterday, shit zombie movie day yesterday. Now I watched it on Tubi. And I actually own the DVD. I bought it. It was years and years and years and years and years ago. I bought a Region 1 DVD of Severed because I like the idea of it. And I rewatched it yesterday. And it had been a very long time, maybe 15, 20 years since I originally saw it. No, it wouldn't be 20 years. I think it was like 2005, 2006, something like that. So it had been a very long time since I watched it. And I kind of enjoyed it again. It's flawed, very flawed. It's low budget, but like some of the ideas behind it are actually really, really good and really interesting. Like there's a part in the film where they've managed to escape the logging area to a second sort of group of loggers further into the forest, who have sort of set up this sort of fortified base camp, I guess you could say, and how they treat the zombies. And sort of they become this sort of hierarchy group where there's this one guy that makes them all get into this pit and shoot zombies with a shotgun. It's an interesting kind of look at dynamics in survival situations and how one group of people would do one thing compared to another group of people who would do another thing. It's very much like in The Walking Dead when Negan's introduced and he's with the Saviors, and they've got that sort of pit outside of the Saviors camp where they put people in to see how they do against the zombies. Yeah, Severed it's an alright movie. It's like I said, it's low budget. There was a time during like the early 2000s where I think it was because of the Dawn of the Dead remake and 28 Days Later had sort of reintroduced zombie cinema to the masses. I mean, we hadn't had a proper zombie film since, say, like 1985. I mean, you can't really say that Evil Dead is a zombie film. I know that came out the same time as Day of the Dead, but Day of the Dead was, well, maybe the Night of the Living Dead remake was probably the last proper zombie film. But early 2000s, there was a lot of these low-budget zombie movies that came out. So you had things like Severed. You had, what else was there? There was Severed, Shadow Dead Riot, Dead and Deader. Just a lot of low-budget sci-fi channel sort of zombie films, and Severed kind of stood out amongst a bunch of crap. And it'd been a while since I'd seen it, and I found it on Tubi. So I was just like, well, I'll give it another pop and see if I enjoy it now as much as I did when it first came out. And I did enjoy it. I mean, like I said, it's flawed. It has zombies in it. The zombie transformations are a bit wank, but the kind of energy that the film brings is pretty good, and it's worth checking. If you've got Tubi, just obviously Tubi's a free app. Jump on there, have a look. I watched another film on Tubi as well, called The Monolith Monsters, or The Monolith Monsters, but I'll get into that in a sec. But if you're looking for like a decent zombie film that isn't really too taxing, then you can't really go wrong with Severed, I guess. It's not a bad film at all. It's better, that is a lot better than Uwe Boll's House of the Dead, which is an atrociously bad movie. But for zombie, I mean, you can find some shit on Tubi. Like when I was going through the movies, there was a lot of these like more modern Sci-Fi Channel zombie films. There was one called Zombies with Tony Todd from 2016, which had like martial arts in it. It's a very shit film. And I don't kind of understand why Tony Todd would do stuff like that. But then, obviously, he was a working actor. He needs the work anyway. But yeah, it's a terrible, terrible film. But then you also, obviously, with the release of The Walking Dead, you had things like the Z Nation, which then spawned Black Summer. And yeah, you have a lot of these sort of zombie cinema tropes that are in these like lower end TV shows. So yeah, check out Severed on Tubi if you can find it. The Monolith Monsters is a 1958, I think, black and white science fiction film about an asteroid that hits, sort of an asteroid that hits a small town in America, like probably Kansas or Texas or something like that. It's usually those places where there's a big desert area that they can easily film in without permits or anything. Especially in the late 1950s and early 60s, when like, sci-fi movies cost like barely anything to make, which is why there's a lot of these golden age sci-fi, I guess you could say it was. But Monolith Monsters is an interesting one because it's one that I hadn't seen before, and it was one that I'd always wanted to see, and it was I don't think it had ever had a proper release, and maybe it had a release by like Shout Factory or someone on Blu-ray or DVD with like another like 1950s sci-fi movie. I cannot really remember, but it's about an asteroid that hits this the desert out in this small town, and there's these rocks that expand when they come in contact with water, and it happens at a time where there's this, I suppose you could say it's a monsoon that happens in a place that doesn't generally have a lot of rain. So these things just grow and spread. And for a very low budget movie, it was very well executed. And like when you think of the plot of things growing when they hit water, you think of like Gremlins and stuff like that. But it was an interesting film, and one I was quite pleased to see on Tubi, because it's one, like I said, I had been meaning to see for quite some while. So that was one of the ones I watched on there. What else did I watch? I suppose the last film that I kind of sat down and enjoyed and watched all the way through, which is a film which I'd never seen before, and it's quite a new film. I think it only came out last year, is Boy Kills World, starring Bill Skarsgård and Jessica Roth from the Happy Death Day movies. It was a good film. It was an interesting addition to the action oeuvre, I guess you could say. It's the kind of film that fits in well with these. In my mind, there's a comic book world. So there's multiple comic book worlds. So you have the comic book movie world, which is things like the Marvel movies and the DC movies. These are your the classic superhero comic books. And on the other hand, you have the other comic book world, which is things like Sin City and The Spirit and these type of movies. But I find that like these films also lend themselves well to this genre. So films like Boy Kills World and Evelyn and Kate with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Boss Level, the Frank Grillo movie, they have this aesthetic and this kind of style that fits in to this sort of alternate comic book universe where it's like a heightened reality. There's another film that came out, God, how many years? About 10 years ago now, with Josh Hartnett called Bunraku, which is, again, another film that fits into this weird sort of indie comic book world of films that aren't necessarily based on comic books. Gunpowder Milkshake is another one with Karen Gillan. That's another film that fits into this world. Jolt with Kate Beckinsale, again, fits in really well because it's this heightened reality of like normal life. But they're not necessarily based on comic books. And Boy Kills World has that exact sort of feel and that exact like vibe to it that fits in quite well with these other these non-comic book movies that I say. Another good example of this kind of genre is Guns Akimbo, the film with Daniel Radcliffe, where he gets guns bolted to his hands. And you could sort of look at the remake of The Crow as well as like sitting in this sort of sub-comic book, non-comic book movie genre. But Boy Kills World's really good, and what makes that film stand out is the fact that the entire film, from the point of view of the main character called Boy, is the fact that he has no voice, he can't speak. So the entire film is through an inner monologue or a narrator, I guess. But the narrator is voiced by H. John Benjamin, who is the voice of Sterling Archer and Bob Belcher from Bob's Burgers. Now, if you've seen these shows, you know that his voice is very droll and very kind of dry. And that's what makes this film stand out, is the fact that H. John Benjamin is the voice of Boy, and it works so well. The action's pretty bonkers and out there, and yeah, Boy Kills World I really enjoyed, and I'm probably going to watch it again at some point. I need to pick it up, actually. I might get the Blu-ray of it. So yeah, that's everything that I've watched. This is a bit of a longer episode than I normally put out. Just thought I'd say hello, have a chat, talk some movies, and yeah, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Podcast. I have got a podcast coming out soon with my friend Tim. I did mention it in another video called Real Talk, REEL Talk, called Real Talk, where we're going to talk about some movies that we saw. Oh, I did watch The Substance as well, but I think I'll leave that for that podcast because we're going to talk about The Substance and the issues that we both had with that movie. So yeah, as usual, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Podcast. Please check out the channel. I will try and find some energy to do some video content for you guys in the future. So thank you everyone for listening. Like I said, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Podcast. I am out. Cheers, everyone.